I've dressed especially for you. So, and at my height, I could really be careful I don't trip over this, so I do apologise. I remember when I was your age, I fell in love with theatre, and it was a play called Gulls by Robert Hewitt. And the play focused on the intellectually disabled young man who failed to communicate at all with any of his family, and it had the comic and the dramatic goings on of that inability when you are trapped, you're a prisoner of your own body. And at moments he would candidly turn to the audience and he would deliver these powerful monologues about how much he understood and yet couldn't communicate that to anyone around him. And you'll forgive me if I get a little teary about this still, even though it was many decades ago now, because my brother was intellectually disabled and had died 3 months prior to that. And theatre gave me this visceral experience, an understanding of my brother that I had never imagined. How was it that theatre gave me the gift of insight that in 17 years I'd never thought about? And that's when I knew that theatre was the form that I could learn from. It was my teacher and it was my best friend, and I passionately loved it, and it's what ultimately got me into drama teaching. And then over the course of time I noticed that theatre took on changes, and change is good, that's fine, until I felt like theatre stopped communicating to me. I think theatre was trying to break up with me, and like a good stalker I was not going to let that happen. And it was probably only in the last couple of years that I felt like theatre was taken over. It's like a clique at school. It had been taken over by the cool kids, and I suddenly wasn't invited to it. And in fact I was told by more than one person who was heavily involved in theatre that if I didn't like what theatre was doing, then I just didn't understand theatre. And I must admit, and as I've said many times before, sometimes theatre, I'm going to apologise for language here, but if my blog is called Shit on Your Play, what are you going to expect me to say? Sometimes theatre has a tendency to be very elitist and is in danger of disappearing up its own arse. So as a result of that, there's a sense where you want the honesty, the experience of theatre. You don't want people to tell you that if you don't understand it, that somehow you're not worthwhile. And if you are ever accused of that in any facet of your life, you'll understand how angry that makes you. So as I watched theatre cavort around with friends that I wasn't invited to, their groups, and theatre, I was only allowed to experience theatre when it was high on crack and running around the Oval. I wrote a very passionate love letter to theatre, and to try to get it to come to its senses. And of course it was my blog, Shit on Your Play. It wasn't easy to write, and I guess I didn't really give it a lot of thought at the time. To me it was just the message I had to deliver to theatre. And it came out of watching a play directed by Simon Stone called Baal at STC, and one by Benedict Andrews at Belvoir called The Seagull. And both of those plays made me so profoundly angry because the reviewers had given them such incredible reviews, and yet to me they disrespected the writer, they disrespected their audience, and I could even see they were disrespecting the actors. I know a cast member of Baal who is still going through therapy, and that is not a joke. That suddenly, why is it that theatre stopped listening to its audience? Why has it stopped talking to me? Why is it only for a small section of people? And theatre should not be that. So I didn't hold back, as the title might suggest. Like a desperate abandoned friend, I was going to keep writing to theatre until it came to its senses. Because here's the thing, you can't be afraid of offending the status quo. You can't be afraid of offering a brand new perspective on what you hear. You can't be frightened of your opinion. You can be frightened what happens when you express it, but there are times where you really do need to say it. And for me, this was my expression. I've never claimed to be the best voice when it comes to theatre, and I don't want to be the only voice either. But I think I still wanted to be a voice in a sea of opinions, and I knew so many people agreed with what I was saying. You know, you talk to people in the audience, the conversation that they wanted to have, and yet, because of that sense that their opinion didn't matter, who do they share that with? Where's that conversation taking place? And this is where it started taking place. Now that's all well and good, and I will tell you that for the first 8 months I wrote this blog anonymously. I put my name on it initially, and then a friend recommended I get my name off it just as quickly. She said, there will be backlash for what you're writing. And I didn't quite understand what she meant until 8 months later the Global Mail approached me and wanted to interview me about my blog because it had certainly attracted a lot of attention. So I willingly outed myself. Quicker than this, hold on. There we go. Great picture. I made sure I didn't wear that same dress just so you know I've got more than one dress in my wardrobe. And so Stephen Crittenden from the Global Mail, for their first edition for their news site, their non-profit news site, went to press with this. And then that is when I learned about criticism, because suddenly I was faced with a number of people who had very strong opinions about me. I think I felt a little bit how Kiss must have felt, and I'm sorry if you don't know who they are, but how Kiss must have felt. For years they wore makeup, and there was an intrigue about what they really looked like. And then when they took their makeup off, everyone said, could you put it back on? And so there was a real sense of people telling me what they thought about me, because for me what upset most people was the fact that I was a teacher, just a teacher, and a woman, and middle-aged. Well, that's apparently the trifecta of things that you shouldn't be in society. And I was really stunned by the arts community having such a backlash towards me, because I always thought the arts community were very open-minded and very liberal, and yet because I wasn't in the industry, then somehow this voice I had was once again dismissed. And it was hard to hear some of those early criticisms. I'm going to share them with you. They came from comments on my blog, from articles in the newspaper. There were a lot of people who felt that what I had to say probably should have been kept to myself. Let's see if I can share them. Here we go. Here's one of my favourites. In the biz, you are a teacher. Failed artist, jaded. Those that can't do, teach. Those that can't teach, teach gym. Those can't act, direct, teach drama. Can't do that, blog bile. Ouch. Here's another one. One could also say that Miss Simmons is a middle-aged failed actor who is taking out her envy and resentment on a generation of younger and more successful theatre workers. But that'd be a cheap shot, wouldn't it? I suppose it would. And here. Alison on Theatre Notes, James Waits and Kevin Jackson are all worthwhile theatre bloggers who have an understanding of theatre. There are without doubt many others. This female version of Mr. G is not one of them. I have never used a body bag in my life, for the record, okay? So it was Year 9 maths all over again. Any insecurities you have, wow, out they come. Because here are these people all with an opinion. And I went back to Year 9 maths, and there I am, sitting on my own in that middle stream of maths that just seemed to elude me. All of my friends are in another class. And as I sit there alone, as soon as the teacher leaves the room, Karen Phillips is going to turn to me and the bullying's going to start. Ah, look at you, Jane Simmons, with all your friends, which is no one. Because you're ugly with your acne. And, you know, and you can imagine at 15 when that happens, you want to disappear. So suddenly there I am, back in Year 9 maths all over again. And you take a moment, you take a breath where you say, do I really want this? Is it worth it? Here I am with my little semi-controversial blog, with this tiny voice out there in the internet? Is it worth it? I mean, what do I really want to say? And I think that's where you kind of, that questioning is that process where you really, I think that's when change really happens. It was easy to write it. Is it easy to write it when your name's on it and everybody has opinion about your opinion? And I think that's what actually helped me step up as a writer and really try to articulate more than opinions, but actually try to teach people through what I was doing as well. So although this criticism from these comments, and then of course I copped it on, here we go. The Australian, published in the Sydney Morning Herald, published some fairly damning articles. I got called a troll, a middle-aged troll, don't miss an opportunity. Once again, other bloggers, a lot of other theatre reviewers who turned out to be my biggest critics at all. I'm not going to say that their nose was out of joint, that they didn't get interviewed by the Global Mail. I'm not going to say that at all. But clearly they didn't like the way I write, because I broke the tradition of how you should write. And if you've read a lot of reviews in the past, you'll know that a lot of them want to spend most of the time talking about the story of the play. And what I really wanted to talk about was the experience of being in that theatre. How did I react to what I saw? How did it feel for me? What did I learn? What's the message? How did all those elements come together? And when I walk out of the theatre, what's it going to make me think? And I say it in a voice that's not trying to be elitist. I'm trying to re-establish that dialogue as an audience member with theatre that I had as a 17-year-old that I just couldn't articulate it back then. I wanted that conversation to keep going. I wasn't going to give up on theatre because I was in a relationship with theatre. And so you don't give up on it. That's love, people. That's love. So thankfully there were a number of supporters who came to my aid and I guess issued their own comments on what they thought, and often had opinions that expressed it in a far worse way than what I could. Here, oh, I'm enjoying this fresh voice in the blogosphere. At last, someone calling mainstream Sydney theatre for what it is, a shocking case of the Emperor's new clothes, not, covering a nasty suppurating rash of carbuncle and pus. Okay. This one here, and this one is taken from an article from The Age by journalist Raymond Gill. Theatre reviewers, bloggers and tweeters shouldn't be miffed that someone has a different opinion to them, but perhaps they should be worried by someone who can write about theatre so provocatively. Thank you, Raymond, I'll take that. Right. And this one is from an interview with the actor Colin Friels. Friels asks if I've read the blog Shit on Your Play. You have to read it. Google it, he says. Tom, that's for you. Google this, that's okay. It's brilliant. The blog's author has been unmasked that day by the Global Mail as a drama teacher at a Sydney private school who has caused a stir among directors and critics for writing tough, occasionally nasty, criticism of the local theatre scene. Like the blogger, Friels detested Benedict Andrews' production of Chekhov's The Seagull at Sydney's Belvoir Theatre last year. I wanted to burn it down. I thought it was spineless. The egoism of the director was monumental. I should point out his wife was in that show, so I hope they had good conversations about that. So, in the end, I guess, once again, you question the role of criticism. And I'm questioning that with my students all the time. There's always that fine balance of how do you give them some sense of direction without taking over the piece? How do you let them make discoveries? What are the right questions to ask? You know, when do you need to give them tough love? And when do you need to step out of the picture? And so this blog and all of these responses to the blog really became, I guess, my epiphany, that criticism. Because if we don't question, we don't learn. And if we don't learn, we don't change. And if we didn't change, I might still think that this look in the 80s was, that is me. I might still think that looks good. And yet I tell you, I have grown. I can't look at that. I've got to. I'm so sorry, and I apologise to any St Andrews students here. You are not to repeat that photo to anyone. So what I want you to think about is this. Where do you want your voice to be heard? Don't be afraid of expressing it. And don't be afraid that sometimes you're going to get criticised for that too. You will all find something in your life where your perspective is really important and that they need to hear it, and perhaps it's not an opinion that's been heard before. And it might not change how things work, and it might change you more than it changes the people that you're expressing that to. But you really, I think it's very important that you don't sit by when there's something that needs to be said. Now, just as a postscript, Karen Phillips, my Year 10 arch nemesis in maths, just so that I can give you hope. The day she stopped bullying me was the day when she turned around and I said to her, before you open your mouth, I don't want to hear a word from you until you get your teeth fixed. Anyone can be a victim. I choose not to be. And I think it's all about perspective. Thank you.